The bright lights illuminated Oprah Winfrey as she walked confidently onto the stage at the National Policy Forum. Dressed in an elegant purple pantsuit, she radiated her trademark poise and authority. The room was filled with policy experts, journalists, and political figures, all waiting in silence as one of America's most respected voices prepared to speak about what she called the moral crisis of our nation. Backstage, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood composed in a navy blue suit, scrolling through her phone with quiet focus. Her team had just forwarded her an advance copy of Oprah's speech, one that had been shared with a few selected media outlets. As she read the transcript, her expression hardened. Oprah was preparing to distort her voting record and misrepresent her policies. Moments earlier, the moderator had introduced Oprah with glowing admiration. The voice of a generation, a self-made billionaire who understands the real struggles of everyday Americans. The audience broke into loud applause as Oprah took the microphone. "Our leaders have failed us," she declared in a firm, commanding tone. "Representatives like Jasmine Crockett promote division instead of unity." Backstage, Crockett's eyes narrowed as she watched the live feed on a nearby monitor. Her press secretary leaned closer and whispered, "We didn't know she was going to call you out by name." Crockett's voice remained calm. "It's fine," she said confidently. "I came prepared." This was no longer an ordinary policy event. It was about to become a defining moment. Tonight, Jasmine Crockett, the rising congresswoman from Texas, would remind Oprah Winfrey that fame does not place anyone above accountability. What followed would leave the audience stunned and shape both women's public images for years to come. Before we continue with this intense exchange, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more moments that mainstream outlets often overlook. The entire convention hall buzzed with anticipation. Cameras were up, phones recording, every eye fixed on Oprah. For decades, she had been America's trusted voice of compassion, a billionaire who rose from poverty and inspired millions. But today, she wasn't here to give away cars or host celebrity interviews. Her message was focused, a warning about the political division she believed was tearing the country apart. Oprah paced the stage with her usual grace, her tone heavy with emotion. "I've spent my life listening to people from all walks of life," she said. "And what I'm hearing now deeply troubles me. Politicians like Representative Crockett have abandoned balance. They speak in extremes, demonize anyone who disagrees, and reject accountability." Large screens behind her showed selective clips from Crockett's congressional hearings, edited to make her passionate advocacy look aggressive and combative. The crowd, mostly made up of Oprah supporters and centrist policymakers, nodded in quiet agreement. "Just last month," Oprah continued, shaking her head, "Representative Crockett blocked a bipartisan bill designed to help working families, simply because it didn't meet her personal demands. This all-or-nothing approach is exactly why Washington can't move forward." Backstage, Jasmine Crockett remained composed, but clearly tense. At 44, she had already earned a reputation as a sharp attorney and civil rights advocate long before entering Congress. A Harvard law graduate, she had spent years fighting for voting rights and justice in Texas courtrooms. For her, politics wasn't about ambition, it was about service. Her chief of staff handed her a tablet showing social media posts trending under the hashtag Oprah Wisdom. "They've been setting this up for weeks," he said quietly. "Word is, Oprah hasn't even read the bill she's criticizing." Crockett opened the actual legislation on her phone and spoke evenly. "She's either twisting the facts on purpose or hasn't done her research. That bill had a hidden amendment that would have stripped protections from the most vulnerable communities." She looked up, resolute. "We didn't oppose aid for families. We opposed the fine print that would have taken it away." A production assistant approached cautiously. "Congresswoman, you're on in 3 minutes," he said. "Also, Oprah's team has requested that you stick to the pre-approved questions." Crockett smiled politely, though her eyes revealed determination. "Of course they did," she replied, adjusting her blazer. As she glanced at her reflection in the mirror, her expression was calm but unwavering. This moment wasn't just about defending her record. It was about confronting a growing trend of celebrities simplifying complex political issues without understanding their consequences. "The audience isn't ready for this," her press secretary warned. "Neither is Oprah," Crockett said quietly, slipping her phone into her pocket. Screenshots of Oprah's past contradictory statements were saved there, and she intended to use them. "They're about to learn," she added, "that edited sound bites can't compete with facts." As the moderator announced her name, Jasmine Crockett drew a steady breath and stepped forward. This wasn't about personal pride anymore. It was about truth, accountability, and integrity in a media-driven political world. The applause as she entered was polite, but restrained. Oprah greeted her with a warm, yet careful smile. The contrast between the two women was striking. Oprah with her global fame and charm, Crockett with her directness and legal precision. "Representative Crockett, thank you for joining us," Oprah began smoothly, motioning to the chair across from her. "I think we can agree that finding common ground is crucial in these divided times." Crockett adjusted her microphone, her tone even but sharp. "Thank you, Ms. Winfrey," she replied. "I agree, as long as that common ground is built on truth, not misrepresentation." A soft murmur spread through the crowd. It was rare to see anyone speak to Oprah so directly. Winfrey tilted her head, a faint smile on her face. "It sounds like you're being defensive before we've even begun. Isn't that part of the issue with compromise in Congress?" Crockett didn't flinch. "I'm not being defensive, Ms. Winfrey. I'm being clear. Your audience deserves honesty about the claims you made earlier." Turning toward the audience, she continued, "Ms. Winfrey implied that I blocked a bipartisan bill meant to help working families. What she didn't mention is that the same bill included an amendment cutting childcare subsidies for more than 300,000 families, all to fund corporate tax breaks." The crowd gasped. Oprah tried to steer the discussion back. "Well, politics is about compromise, isn't it?" "Compromise shouldn't mean sacrificing those who need help the most," Crockett said calmly. "And perhaps your audience should also know that your own production company stood to benefit from those very same tax breaks." A sharp reaction rippled through the audience. The moderator attempted to step in, but Crockett raised her hand slightly. "Transparency matters," she said firmly. Ms. Winfrey framed this as a talk on American values, but never mentioned her financial ties to the policy she's supporting. Suddenly, the large screens behind them changed. Instead of the pre-approved visuals, they showed financial documents linking Oprah's companies to the proposed legislation. Backstage, Crockett's tech team had overridden the feed. The technical director rushed to fix it, but it was too late. The audience had already seen the evidence. Oprah's calm demeanor slipped. "This is inappropriate," she said firmly. "We're here for a civil discussion about unity, not accusations." "Civil doesn't mean avoiding the truth," Crockett replied, her voice steady and strong. "Unity starts with honesty, especially about who profits from the policies we debate." The moderator, clearly unsettled, tried to steer things back on topic. "Let's move on to the broader issue of division in politics," they suggested. "Gladly," Crockett said, pulling out her phone. "I have a few of Ms. Winfrey's own statements that illustrate exactly what's wrong." She read aloud several of Oprah's past quotes, each one contradicting the other on corporate responsibility and compromise. From offstage, Oprah's team waved for the moderator to cut the segment. A producer whispered something urgently, and the moderator quickly announced, "We'll take a short break." Crockett arched a brow. "Are we taking a break because I'm presenting facts?" she asked, her voice still calm but cutting. The microphones caught it before the feed was muted. The audience stirred as lights came up for an unscheduled intermission. Within minutes, social media exploded. Hashtags like "Crockett exposes Oprah" began trending. Clips of the confrontation flooded online, dividing viewers between those shocked that anyone had challenged Oprah and those praising Crockett's composure and courage. Backstage, Oprah's team scrambled. This wasn't part of the plan, her publicist snapped. She was supposed to stick to the approved questions. Meanwhile, Crockett sat in her dressing room, sipping water and reviewing her notes. They'll try to cut my mic, she told her staff. Make sure Plan B is ready. The atmosphere in the studio had completely changed. Viewers who had tuned in expecting Oprah's trademark inspiration now sensed something different, a political showdown unfolding live. As cameras rolled once more, Oprah's production crew distributed a newly revised debate format to the press and participants. Structured questions, 2-minute responses, no interruptions. It was obvious damage control. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't rattled. She came prepared, holding a stack of printed evidence that she calmly handed to reporters seated in the front row. "What are you doing?" Oprah asked, her mic still hot by mistake. Crockett looked directly at her and said firmly, "Making sure the truth doesn't get edited out." The red lights above the cameras flickered back on, signaling the live broadcast's return. And instantly, tension surged. The moderator, visibly uneasy, tried to restore order with a neutral question about infrastructure spending, but the room's energy had shifted entirely. Millions of viewers were now witnessing something rare: Oprah Winfrey being directly confronted. "Before we continue," Crockett began calmly, "we need to clear the air. Ms. Winfrey made inaccurate claims about my voting record, and the audience deserves the truth." Oprah's warm signature smile faded as she replied evenly, "I think we've moved past that point, Congresswoman. Let's focus on solutions." "Accountability isn't hostility," Crockett answered, her tone steady. "Solutions built on falsehoods help no one." She turned toward the crowd. "I have immense respect for Ms. Winfrey's achievements. Her rise from poverty to global influence is nothing short of inspiring. But with influence comes responsibility, especially when you speak on policies that affect millions." A soft ripple of agreement spread through the audience. Noticing the shift, Oprah tried to reclaim the stage with her familiar emotional tone. "What Americans truly want," she began, "is for leaders to rise above division and work together. I've spoken with presidents and everyday citizens alike, and what I've learned is, with all due respect," Crockett interrupted gently, "what Americans really want is the truth." She raised a document from her folder for everyone to see. "This is the actual text of the bill you criticized me for opposing. Section 43 removed key healthcare protections for vulnerable communities, and Section 119 introduced new tax benefits for major media corporations, including your own." Instantly, the massive display behind them lit up, highlighting the very sections she mentioned. Crockett continued, "Your company, Harpo Productions, stood to gain about $247 million in tax advantages from this clause, yet you portrayed my opposition as denying aid to working families." Gasps filled the hall, followed by murmurs of disbelief. Oprah's expression shifted from surprise to irritation, then back to a controlled smile. "I think you're missing the broader perspective, Congresswoman," she said carefully. "Policy discussions demand nuance." "I couldn't agree more about nuance," Crockett interjected, still respectful but unwavering. "Which is why your earlier remarks surprised me. They lacked that very balance." She lifted her phone. "May I replay your statement for clarity?" Without waiting for permission, Crockett pressed play. Oprah's own voice echoed through the hall. "Politicians like Representative Crockett have abandoned moderation. They speak in absolutes, vilify their opponents, and refuse to admit when they're wrong." Crockett looked straight at Oprah. "That doesn't sound nuanced, Ms. Winfrey. It sounds like the same divisive rhetoric you claim to oppose." The moderator tried to intervene, but Crockett stayed calm and firm. "Here's my main concern," she said clearly. "With a platform as large as yours, every word carries weight. When those words lack context or accuracy, they don't just affect reputations. They mislead citizens about how their government truly works." The once lively crowd had fallen silent, completely absorbed in the confrontation. Sensing the gravity of the moment, Oprah shifted tactics, her voice softer, more conciliatory. I understand your frustration, Congresswoman, she said. Perhaps we started off on the wrong note. What I truly want is to understand your vision. Please explain why you believe your approach is right for America. It was classic Oprah, turning confrontation into conversation. But Crockett didn't take the bait. I appreciate that, Ms. Winfrey, she replied evenly. But this isn't about emotions. It's about accuracy. She addressed the audience directly. When public figures speak on policy, they have an obligation to be informed. The bill in question would indeed help some working families, but at the expense of others. It proposed funding new programs by cutting existing ones that serve our most vulnerable citizens. After a short pause, she delivered her sharpest point yet. And here's what your audience might not know. Just 3 weeks before you publicly endorsed this bill, your investment group acquired significant shares in companies that would directly benefit from those same changes. Crockett held up the highlighted financial disclosure documents. These are the same companies sponsoring this very event. The room erupted. Reporters snapped photos of the papers she'd distributed earlier. Oprah's team rushed from backstage, gesturing frantically to the crew. This is inappropriate and potentially libelous, Oprah protested, her usually composed tone cracking slightly as flashes from cameras filled the room. You're making serious claims based on loose connections, she said sharply. These are all public records, Ms. Winfrey, Crockett replied calmly. SEC filings, congressional records, and your own statements. Everything I've shared is verifiable. The tension in the studio was electric. Oprah, who had built her brand on empathy and control, was now visibly uncomfortable. The crowd sensed it. Cameras zoomed in as she folded her hands and took a deep breath before speaking. Congresswoman Crockett, I've always stood for transparency, but this feels like an ambush. Crockett didn't flinch. An ambush happens when someone hides the truth. I'm simply uncovering it. The audience erupted with applause. Even some of Oprah's longtime viewers watching live began flooding social media with divided reactions, half defending Oprah's legacy, the other praising Crockett's fearlessness. The hashtag #JudgeCrockettConfrontsOprah began trending within minutes. Backstage, producers exchanged worried glances as the network feed registered a massive surge in live viewers. Crockett continued, her tone steady and deliberate. I don't want conflict, Ms. Winfrey. I want clarity. America deserves leaders and influencers who value facts over fame. Oprah leaned forward, trying to regain footing. You're right about one thing, she said softly. America is tired. Tired of division, tired of conflict, tired of seeing women tear each other down on national television. The line drew sympathy from part of the crowd, but Crockett responded immediately. Respectfully, Ms. Winfrey, women holding each other accountable isn't tearing down. It's what progress looks like. That single line flipped the entire energy in the room. The audience went silent for a moment, then broke into loud applause. Even Oprah seemed taken aback by the clarity of the moment. The moderator, realizing the show was spiraling beyond control, attempted to wrap things up. But Crockett had one final statement. I grew up watching you, Ms. Winfrey, she said with genuine emotion. You taught an entire generation to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Today, I'm just honoring that lesson. There was nothing left to add. Oprah nodded slowly, her expression softening. Then maybe, she said, I taught you too well. With that, the show's closing music began to play. Cameras panned across a divided but captivated audience, some teary, some stunned, all fully aware they had just witnessed television history. Within hours, clips of the confrontation spread across every major social platform. News anchors called it the boldest televised exchange of the year. By midnight, over 2.7 million people had viewed the video online, with countless debates raging across comment sections. For Jasmine Crockett, it wasn't about going viral. It was about proving that truth still mattered. And for Oprah, it was a rare reminder that even the most powerful voices could be challenged when facts took the stage. The confrontation instantly became a pop culture phenomenon, dominating entertainment headlines and sparking national discussion. Major news outlets called it one of the most talked-about moments of the year. One headline read, "Oprah's toughest interview yet." Entertainment Tonight even brought in body language experts to analyze every gesture, every pause, and every shift in tone. Inside Harpo Productions, tension ran high as Oprah and her executive team held an emergency meeting to assess the fallout. According to one insider, she's taking this very personally. In nearly 4 decades of broadcasting, Oprah Winfrey had never been blindsided like this, and questions quickly arose about who had failed to properly research the Congresswoman's background or prepare adequate talking points. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's rise was nothing short of meteoric. Her office reported non-stop calls from every major network seeking interviews. Her social media following surged by more than 500,000 in a single day, and prominent political figures across the country began reaching out to her directly. Policy analysts soon turned their attention to the very legislation that sparked the confrontation. The Washington Post released an in-depth analysis largely confirming Crockett's interpretation and highlighting the potential conflicts of interest she had exposed. 3 days later, Oprah issued a carefully worded public statement. "Throughout my career, I valued truth, growth, and learning," she wrote. "My recent discussion with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has led me to reflect deeply. While I entered that conversation with good intentions, I now realize I didn't fully understand the complexity of the legislation or disclose all relevant connections. I've always believed that when we know better, we do better, and this is my moment to do better." The statement drew mixed reactions. Some applauded her humility and accountability, while others criticized it as a delayed attempt at damage control. But then came the most unexpected twist. A week after the televised exchange, 23 major celebrities and influencers signed an open letter pledging to uphold higher standards for political commentary. The Responsibility and Influence Pledge required signatories to disclose potential conflicts of interest, consult policy experts before discussing legislation, and clearly distinguish personal opinions from factual statements. Leading that list was none other than Oprah Winfrey herself. In her introduction to the pledge, she wrote, "Sometimes our greatest growth comes from our hardest moments. My exchange with Congresswoman Crockett revealed blind spots in how I discuss public policy. Instead of moving on, I've chosen to learn from it and help set new standards for responsible dialogue." For Jasmine Crockett, the aftermath brought both opportunity and scrutiny. Her national profile had skyrocketed, but so had the pressure. Conservative groups that once praised her criticism of Oprah now sought her as a political ally, while some progressives worried she was aligning too closely with celebrity culture. Crockett, however, remained calm and consistent. In an interview on MSNBC's Morning Joe, she clarified, "This wasn't about left versus right, or me versus Ms. Winfrey. It was about a core principle. Accuracy must always come before influence. I deeply respect Oprah's achievements and the barriers she's broken, but my concern was the misrepresentation of a bill that affects real people's lives." 2 weeks later, subtle yet meaningful changes began to emerge across media and politics. News outlets started including more detailed policy breakdowns in their reports. Public figures became more cautious in their commentary, clearly labeling opinions versus expertise. Most significantly, the controversial bill at the center of the confrontation was reintroduced with sweeping revisions. It maintained support for working families while removing proposed cuts to essential programs and completely eliminating the corporate tax breaks Crockett had criticized. The bill's sponsor even acknowledged that the Winfrey-Crockett exchange had shed light on the bill's weaknesses, saying, "Sometimes it takes a public spotlight to expose what's buried in legislative text." This debate made the bill stronger and fairer. 6 months later, Crockett delivered the keynote address at Harvard's Kennedy School Conference on Media, Celebrity, and Political Discourse. Her speech, titled "Accountability in the Age of Influence," filled the auditorium. "The democratization of media has given more people a voice than ever before," she said. "But amplification without verification can weaken the very democracy it seeks to protect. Whether you're a first-term congresswoman or a billionaire media icon, the standard must remain the same. Claims need evidence, and influence requires responsibility. In the front row sat Oprah Winfrey, listening attentively. The two women were later photographed in conversation at the reception, both smiling, though neither disclosed what was said. Exactly 1 year after their televised clash, they jointly announced a free online course on media literacy and policy analysis, a program designed to help citizens understand how news, entertainment, and legislation intersect. Its first module was titled, Bringing Receipts: How to Verify Claims from Any Source. The Oprah Crockett moment soon entered the cultural lexicon. People began using the phrase, "Do you have the Crockett receipts for that?" as a humorous way to demand evidence in debates. High school and college teams studied the confrontation as a case study in preparation and precision. But beyond the memes and media buzz, something far more important had changed. A new public expectation for truth and transparency. No platform, no matter how influential, was beyond fact-checking. No claim, no matter how convincing, was beyond verification. What began as a televised clash had evolved into something much larger, a redefinition of how influence and accountability coexist in modern America. And the takeaway was unmistakable. In an age of instant communication and celebrity power, facts still matter. Preparation still matters. And as Jasmine Crockett proved that day beside one of the world's most powerful women, courage backed by evidence matters most of all. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell for more analyses of defining political moments. Share in the comments which public figure you think needs a fact check next.